Hello again, and welcome to the fourth episode of Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness Podcast. My name's David, and I'm on a mission here to talk about all kinds of different things, all post-concussion, traumatic brain injury related. So today, we'd like to take a look and explore not just the microbiome. And for those people that don't know, I'll explain a little bit more in a second, or you're not familiar with the term. Gut health, really, and something that a lot of people with post-concussion syndrome will have or will develop at some time, if they haven't already, which is a chronic illness called fibromyalgia. And also would debate the term illness or against pro vis-a-vis disability. Certain countries in Europe, such as Spain and others, have now reclassified fibromyalgia as a disability. Yet in other countries it's still seen as something that's only just emerging as being accepted as real. So again, we're getting into grey territories, especially in the UK and to some extent in the USA, although it's probably better in the USA. So, the microbiome. What is it? What does it do? Well, it's really, the microbiome is trillions and trillions of cells. There's a range in the microbiota, as it's also called as well. So it's a difference between everything that lives in your gut that's there to kind of help your body function, really. So both inside and out, the body has a huge array of microorganisms. Bacteria are the biggest ones, biggest part in that. There's also single-celled organisms known as archaea, as well as fungi, viruses and other microbes, including viruses as well that attack bacteria. Together they're called the human microbiota, and your body's microbiome is all your genes, all your microbiota that it contains, and both terms are used as well, I guess. So the links with fibromyalgia are probably a lot clearer than somebody recovering from post-concussion syndrome. There's theories that fibromyalgia starts in different ways, and in fact there are five key triggers for fibromyalgia, which won't actually begin the illness, but they'll, in my opinion, worsen it or actually bring it out in stages. So sometimes a person can live with it almost dormant for many years, as I did. Thinking back to being a child, I had constant gut problems, but I didn't have fully blown fibromyalgia. And then when you encounter some trauma, some tragedy or virus in your life, or it could be something like grief or an accident or loss of a loved one, then the stress can trigger it in stages. I kind of think it comes on usually in 2 or 3 stages, but of course people may be different, and it depends on what you've gone through. For me personally, if I go back to 2006 and accidents and then being ill, losing my job and home and everything, I had a number of triggers, one after the other. So that the stress of being, kind of like behind with mortgage payments, and knowing that I was going to lose my house, and knowing that my job was probably going to be get the chop any minute, and other things as well. And then a couple of friends dying. So there were just various triggers, and then before I knew it, I was just absolutely wiped out, and the thing had come on full blown, and I was just sapped of all energy and just wanted to sleep all the time. So the triggers, the one trigger is said to be a virus for fibromyalgia. So some type of virus that invades a microbiome and kind of camps in there, and so it may be something like, I think with me, I'd been to India and Brazil back in the early 20noughties and contracted, I think, a virus each time, either from the food or the water, I don't know. And I think that might have been the start of something. So that was a minor trigger, after which was never the same again. So virus can be the first trigger. A trauma, so either head injury, for instance, is a really common one to trigger fibromyalgia, or some other type of trauma, an accident, a car accident or a fall, or something that's really, shook you up physically. Grief is a major one. So grief, again, can relate to post concussion syndrome, because also, obviously there's a grief of losing a loved one or somebody really close to you. But then there's a grief and the grieving process, which we talk about post concussion, which is usually starts within the first year or so of post concussion, or prolonged post concussion, or persistent post concussion syndrome. Then you've got external conditions and stress, which can also bring on fibromyalgia as well. So a stressful job, a stressful lifestyle, too poor diet, too much overindulgence in various things. They can all add up to like oxidative stress that can bring on. And at first it can seem almost like an autoimmune illness, fibromyalgia, but it's not, in fact. But it will, as it affects your biome, your microbiome, it will knock your immune system down and down and down. So you'll keep picking up little colds and viruses and bugs and things as well, and it'll just seem never-ending. There's theories about other causes, and like a fifth trigger or a fifth cause can also be abuse in childhood, either physical, mental, emotional, psychological, or even sexual abuse, unfortunately. These are things which it's said in recent studies that violence against a child or abuse to a child of any sort can actually sensitize the brain and nervous system so highly, if it's in those formative early years, say the first 10 years of a child's life, it can sensitize the brain so much and the nervous system so much that it can set the scene almost for fibromyalgia later in life. Or even children and teenagers sadly do get fibromyalgia as well. So the brain's responses and the nervous system's responses to any type of pain following those first few years will be so overworked, and the response will be kind of like too big. The response will be too much for what's actually happening. So any tiny little pain trigger then brings on the pain that fibromyalgia sufferers know is very, very real, even though you can't see it and you can't kind of always locate just one spot on the body. It could be in numerous places at once. You've got your tender points, your tender spots a rheumatologist will test in order to diagnose as partial diagnosis of fibromyalgia. Though there is a blood test on the way, one that's been developed, and yet, like everything else, we're just waiting and waiting and waiting for it. So there are markers in the blood with fibromyalgia that can be detected. There are tests at the moment, but they're very expensive. You're talking £400 or £500, or $600-700 or more just for the test, and hence why you need a rheumatologist just to go through certain questions and things these days to diagnose fibromyalgia, and even then it can just be a possible diagnosis. So if any of you listening with post-concussion syndrome and you've had fibromyalgia, or you've got it, should I say, you have it, or you think that you may have it, then it's kind of like a double whammy when you get those two together. I think a lot of the symptoms are very similar and a lot of the symptoms cross over. So it does make it truly, truly difficult. Again, I keep relating back to my own personal story, but when I went back to about 2008 and 2009, when all the stress and the trauma and things started to bring out my fibromyalgia fully, I think about that time, and it was just really, really heavy to deal with. It was all the symptoms would just kind of like be there. If you can imagine, like crowded in the room at the back, you'd have the anxiety, you'd have, low mood or depression, you'd have extreme fatigue, you'd have pain all over, you'd be aching, you feel like you have flu, you just want to sleep, and just so many other, the brain fog, excuse me, which is just like, to me, the brain fog felt like the amnesia, the post-traumatic amnesia that we get with Post Concussion Syndrome, which I'm going to talk about later. And it would be like, what's my name? Where am I? What am I doing? What was I doing 5 seconds ago? I really can't remember. And you'd just be completely blank, absolute blankety blank. And for a while, it was pretty scary. And I'm sure, as you know, if you've had brain fog like that, it's frustrating, and it's upsetting as well to start with. After a while, I learnt to be able to kind of like, laugh at the situation a bit as well, just to help myself as much as to help other people, because you can be in the middle of doing something or talking about something, and then whoosh, all of a sudden this fog just descends, and you're like, what am I doing again? And so, the only way to really survive that is develop a sense of humour about it, and try and coach yourself to learn to be, a little bit more accepting all the time, that the fact that it just happens, and that there's nothing I can do about it. Just kind of recede and relax, sit back and breathe until, your thoughts start to come back to you. So back to the microbiome and the gut. Well, what happens when you have a brain injury? What's the first thing to happen is, obviously, you get that with a mild traumatic brain injury, you get these axonal shearing and like distension of cells in certain areas of the brain. Anything that goes into communication through the central nervous system down the spine goes to the gut. So it's like your gut and your microbiome are like two other brains on their own. There's also studies being done in Cambridge, Massachusetts, on the fact that your heart has neurons in it. You've also got neurons in your gut and gliali. So in effect, you've got at least 4 brains. And this is something that years and years ago, you'd hear people talking about, follow your heart, trust your gut feeling, and the hippies used to say, your heart's got a mind of its own, and it turns out that it actually has. The amazing thing. So the microbiome is a great part of that, a big part of that. I always kind of think that, well, if your conscious mind is here in your brain, in your head, your 2 brains, your left and right brain, then you've got, like, your subconscious mind is down in your microbiome, in your gut, and your subconscious urges, subconscious thoughts and things, they kind of bubble up quite slowly, and they come up, and sometimes you may just be angry or sad for no reason, and it's usually things that are coming from there. So it's like where 60% of your immune system is or more, which is in your gut, and your microbiome as well. It can make its own serotonin, in fact. So it's quite a complex system that biologists are only just starting to understand now. So there's a lot of activity there. Now, when you've had a head injury, you can start to see the microbiome going out of balance. You'll start to feel different. You'll start to feel like your body some days is under attack. Headaches, pains, neck pains, all kinds of things at random, and then like anxiety, feelings of dizziness, brain fog, and all of these can be related to the microbiome, all of them. So you start to get this imbalance, and then other things suffer as well. And the same with fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia seems to be a permanent change for the worse in this microbiome and in your gut health. And often, most people with fibromyalgia will have some kind of irritable bowel gut problems, problems with certain types of food, food intolerances that will kind of get worse over time, and then you'll get maybe intolerances to certain drugs and medications and even chemical substances and normal household chemical substances. So yeah, it gets to the point where your gut's kind of more and more under attack, or it feels that it is. I get something called histamine intolerance, and then eating any food that's rich in histamines or that produces histamines, like tuna fish or red wine does. I think strawberries is another mast cell histamine releaser, liberator. And if I eat something like that, painful, sore throat, itching skin, vicious headaches, acid reflux, just feeling of dizziness. It can cause all sorts. So your microbiome's out of sync, and histamines are obviously there in your body to ward off, anything that the body sees as like a contaminant. So like anything that shouldn't be there. So histamine's a natural release to kind of fight it off. But when things go wrong, your body's just releasing histamines or other cells at random, for anything you eat. So it constantly thinks it's under attack. And so that kind of ties back into a similar theme with fibromyalgia, with pain. Anytime there's a slight pain stimulus, or even if you see somebody in pain, or you see somebody on TV that's where they're in pain, it can actually trigger a response for somebody with fibromyalgia, and it tends to make you have a great aversion to violence or any kind of pain as well. So yeah, your body breaking down all these signals and things out from outside, and then almost kind of making the wrong response. It's like taking a sledgehammer to crack a walnut, for instance. You're not only going to crack the shell of the nut, you're going to destroy the thing. You're going to, just pulverize it. So in a sense, with PCS too, we have similar emotional responses, what's called emotional lability. So you might end up being very sad, very down, or like even crying for almost no reason. It could be some tiny little trigger, something that's significant to you or your brain, and other people might just like not even notice it. And next thing you know, you could be, in floods of tears, or you could be laughing controllably at something which probably isn't even funny to most people. So it can be one of the toughest symptoms as well, psychologically. So there's a lot of careful links between each a PCS and fibromyalgia, and when we study this and we look at how to try and reverse and heal some of that damage to the microbiome, then you've got to look at food and diet primarily. It's the same whether you have fibromyalgia, PCS, or whether you have cancer or mass inflammation or ME, CFS, anything like that. Any chronic illness is usually down to inflammation. Inflammation generally always begins in the gut and the microbiome, and that's usually an invasion of cells and things that shouldn't be there, or that are aggravating matters as well. So your food, look at what you're putting in your body, what you're eating. Are you still drinking, caffeine every day? Are you drinking 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cups of coffee or tea? Normal tea, black tea that is. Are you drinking any kind of soft drinks? As we know these days, here in the UK, we've got the sugar tax thing. And it's like, for everybody to cut down on sugar, the government said. But what we found is the sugar-free drinks are probably even unhealthier and probably even more dangerous. We know that sugar feeds rogue cells and it feeds stem cells that can become cancerous cells. But also in the sugar-free drinks, they're full of like sucralose, which has got, I think, 2 or 3 chlorine molecules. That's chlorine. That's the stuff that you use to clean out your swimming pool. So yeah, you could effectively kind of use this Coca-Cola or Pepsi or what, Mountain Dew, whatever it is, to clean out a pool. You've seen what it does if you dip like dirty pennies in Coca-Cola and kind of take them out later. They're absolutely sparkling clean. So I don't think soft drinks really should be on the agenda or on the menu too much. Fruit juice, well, yeah, that's good. But as with anything else, that also depends on how well your body, after suffering head injury or fibromyalgia or both, how well your body can handle acidity. That's one thing that I always take a little bit of exception to. I see on the internet all these people preaching about, oh, you've got to eat so many fruits every morning and, kind of every day and this, that and the other. But I can't eat fruit before kind of 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. Otherwise, I'm kind of crippled. It's very, very acidic to my body. We each have a different level of ability to process acid foods. In our, it's unique to each of us. Some will have weak, like myself, have weak acid processing in the morning and through the day. So my body can't really tolerate it. Otherwise, it'll make me really kind of bilious and a lot of heartburn and kind of in pain. But in the evening, I can tolerate some fruit, whereas other people won't be able to tolerate fruit in the evening. If I drink fruit juice for breakfast, I'd be ill for hours. I think, it kind of like do me in. But in the evening, I can drink it quite happily. So your acid-alkali balance has to come into the equation as well. So I'm always, always have that in mind when I see these people preaching about diet and food and what to eat and when to eat it. And, it's not necessarily the same for everyone. And I think maybe a lot of these people that are, so even some so-called professional nutritionists and things as well, they don't take that into account. There's some very good books on acid-alkali diet that you should probably look at as well if you're concerned with your diet too. And those will help you understand better. But yeah, eating fruit and things in the morning isn't for everybody. No matter who tells you, if you eat something and you're then thinking, oh, I don't feel well, or I feel terrible, or I've got raging heartburn, or my skin's itching at a certain time of day, then it's probably good to avoid. You can make a list of, what I do is have 3 lists, like 3 sheets of paper, one for morning, one for afternoon, one for evening. I don't really eat much in the morning or afternoon generally. But only one main meal in the evening. But you can have 3 sheets, one for morning, one for afternoon, one for evening, and just write things on there that maybe don't agree with you, so you know what to avoid. And that's probably easier than listing everything that you can eat, because then you might need a few sheets, depending on how broad your tastes are. So yeah, bear in mind acid-alkali, acid tolerance to acidic foods. So, yeah, getting back to fibromyalgia and the microbiome, what do you need to do to start to put it right? Well, there's a lot of talk about probiotics, and those can be very good. I don't think anything you can get from the supermarket is ever really going to be much good. I think that fad started a few years ago, the little yogurt drinks. They may have a few, cultures in it, a few million or whatever, but I think those are probably for people who are just reasonably healthy anyway. And, they're not too strong because it's just there to top up the good gut flora and things as well. Now, if you have a long-term problem with your gut, fibromyalgia, even from PCS or any other illness, you may well want to consider taking a good probiotic, even with a prebiotic, which is the food for the probiotic in your gut. The one I use, or I've been using, is 50 billion CFU. That's like floral units of bacteria, of good bacteria. and they come with different strains. I'll use one that's at least 6 strains, different strains of probiotic, preferably 10 or 11, ideally. So you've got a broader range as possible. You will see some that have only got like 1, 2 or 3 strains in, but I think it's probably better to have more in there, and it generally feels better. So you can help to maintain good gut health with probiotic, but science is only really discovering now that the microbiome could be the answer to a lot of chronic problems, chronic inflammation, even cancer and other illnesses, even autism, ME, fibromyalgia, other things. All could be linked to gut health and the microbiome health. And that leads us back to GC-MAF, the glycoprotein-derived macrophage activating factors. And that's the stuff that's already in your body that's involved in vitamin D binding production. And it activates macrophages. Macrophages in the gut is what kills off the bad cells or the potential cells which are turning into cancer. Your body produces hundreds of, even thousands of cancer cells per day, even in a healthy person. And those macrophages are responsible for eating them up and kind of, spitting them out and getting rid of them. It's only when your gut gets so far out of balance and so far inflamed that those cancer cells can start to get off on their own and kind of take root somewhere. And that's when you really need to look at the gut health all over again. So GC-MAF is not known about. You might hear me mention it as well. It seems to be a really, really effective and powerful tool for healing a gut that's out of alignment, leaky gut syndrome, IBS, and all the other illnesses and diseases that I mentioned. And it's generally about 42 different strains. GC-MAF is one of the strains, and it can be made into a yogurt culture with colostrum, which is like powdered cow's mother's milk or goat's milk, and obviously with raw milk or maybe just organic full fat milk. And when that's mixed together into live culture yogurt, it takes about 48 hours. And then you take it twice a day. Or it's available in other forms as well, like a fruit drink or a capsule. But there's so many positive, good reports of people using this and recovering, even treating children who have autism and getting results within weeks and months rather than years. So one thing to consider, one thing to study, one thing to look up. Don't just look at what Google says. Don't just look at what cancer research or the normal mainstream media outlets say, because they don't want people to discover GC-MAF. They're just poo-pooing it and saying, there's no evidence, there's no scientific research. Well, actually there's about 1,300 scientific papers on it. It's just that people are trying to suppress it. Drug companies are trying to suppress it because it's a natural substance and can't be patented. And so you don't want to upset the chemotherapy market or the drug market, which, with something that GC-MAF would cost like $300 or $400 a month or less, even less than that. If you make your own, it could be $150 a month. They don't want that to replace what they're selling. So unfortunately, the law is on the side of the drug companies as well. So yeah, have a look into GC-MAF, spelled GC-MAF. I think it's large G, small c, large M, large A, large F. And look up, maybe have a look on YouTube, Antonio Ruggiero. It's something which can really help, not just with your chronic illness, but with your overall health. So I'm hopefully going to get a course fairly soon and start making that within the next week or two. So I'm going to keep you updated because after the last few months I've been through a little bit of a relapse, fatigue-wise and things, due to various things going on in my life. So I want to see how effective this is. Obviously, I'm not asking you to believe me. Just do your own research, look up the thing yourself, and see what you can find and see what people. I think there are groups on Facebook as well that will show you and teach you how to make your own GC-MAF yogurt. So it's easy enough to do. It looks easy enough to do. So, pretty much anybody could do it. All you need to do then is get hold of the probiotic strains and the colostrum, and off you go. I don't think, if you are lactose intolerant, by the way, there is a fruit drink alternative, or a capsule form. So don't worry if you are. There's a way around it. So, fibromyalgia. I want to hear from any of you as well. I got a couple of messages last night, and one of those gentlemen has both fibromyalgia, and I think he's had something like 10 concussions. And he's living in France at the moment, but he's a Brit, and he's asking about what we knew in the links between the two illnesses, because he's got 2 or 3 friends that he's made on this journey over the last few years that all have PCS and fibromyalgia. And so it seems that there's a really close link between the two. It's not just something that's coincidental. And this chap was saying as well that he's tried various different things. I think he's tried Simpson oil, that's cannabis oil, CBD. And he said that helped with some things, with his sleep, with his pain, but it was too expensive and he couldn't get any more. So then he's tried different therapies and things, magnetic therapy and stuff, and had kind of like results for a while, but nothing that he could maintain. So I had a brief email chat with him about GC-MAF and other things, and I think he's probably going to stay in touch. But he was saying as well that although he felt his PCS was improving at times and getting better, then as it did, the fibromyalgia came in and just knocked him sideways, and every now and then it'd be like, you'd just be kind of managing, and I think he's got his own business in France. He'd be managing, and his wife would help him manage, and his kids, but all of a sudden he'd be like, bang, he'd just come along and swipe him sideways, and he'd be like, in his own words, down in the gutter again. So yeah, it's not something that's talked about a lot as well in this country, is coping once things kind of swipe you sideways. This gent's very lucky to have his wife and his children helping him with his business, and that's been supportive of him, although it is rough times for him, he was saying. But for others, if you're single, or you don't have family that are supportive, or you don't have any family at all to support you, or friends who understand, then you're in survival mode. It's like a survival course, day to day, week to week. It really is, because if you can't work full time. You might be able to work a little bit part time or here and there, but then you have to survive. If you haven't got any savings, if you haven't got a home of your own, all the normal stuff that people take for granted, then you're going to be living off handouts. Unfortunately, you're living off the state, or kind of claiming sickness benefit or whatever, ESA. And in that case, you're really, really surviving day to day, week to week. So those are also types of people who want to hear from as well. So if you are listening and you are in a similar situation in the UK or in the USA on disability benefits, then please get in touch. Would love to hear your story as well. So links with fibromyalgia, what things help both conditions? Well, again, you've got your flavonoids, resveratrol, and other things, Novasol, curcumin. I can't think of them all at the moment. But one thing that's particularly good, supposed to be really good for the fibromyalgia, is guafenicin. I think I pronounced that right. Guafenicin usually is only available from the United States of America in tablet form, or they put it in a cough medicine, liquid medicine as well. Now, guaifenesin is that rang a bell with me because I know from my work with oils and tree oils, oleoresins, that comes from the guacwood tree, which grows in Ecuador, Paraguay, Brazil, and is closely related in the same genus, a species of tree, to the tree that gives us Palo Santo, Graveolens berceus. So these two trees are also in the same group of family of trees as frankincense. Now, there's no surprise there that your frankincense is one of the the most healing trees on the planet. But then there's this other little group, Palo Santo. You've got the guacawood, and also copaiba, which I mentioned before as well. So I think tree medicine is absolutely amazing, and we still don't even know. We only still know a fraction or a third about what there is to know about trees and what they offer us chemically in terms of phytochemicals. So the guaifenesin is synthesized from guacwood. Now, when I first got a bottle of guacwood from India ages ago, it goes, all the oils are mixed in India, and they kind of like distilled and things there. So even though the oil comes from South America, it goes to India first. Ordered this bottle. It comes in an aluminium bottle, so it's solid, this guacwood oil. You have to boil it up to about, I think, 118 degrees Celsius for it to liquefy. And it's quite a thick oil, but it's usually quite clear to light yellow. And this stuff is wonderful for fibromyalgia. Absolutely amazing. Again, it's one that some people will be able to tolerate directly onto the skin, although it is quite sticky. So it's usually good to mix it with a carrier oil. I tend to prefer the carrier oils which are from the same region. So like cacay, spelt Cacay, which comes from Colombia. It's a fruit tree. Or maybe andiroba. Andiroba's from Brazil, very good for the skin. Or acai berry as well, very good. So if you mix that with the guacwood, it can be used as an expectorant as well, for the chest and rounded chest and throat. So if you know with fibro you have a lot of mucus, you have a lot of phlegm, and you get very congested, and you're often croaking and heaving and things as well, then just like guaifenesin tablets, the guacwood can be really, really useful. And if you mix that in with some copaiba as well, and if you want it to be more scented, you could use a little bit of Palo Santo oil, just 1 or 2 drops. And then you've got a really, really powerful healing combination. And also something that wards off cancer, skin cancer and lung cancer and other things as well. And it's recommended by several international rheumatic and arthritic organisations as well as a guacwood. They really, really recommend it to people that are suffering. So if you know anybody else that has rheumatism or arthritis as well, you can kind of do your own research and tell them about that too. Many different things for fibromyalgia. MSM tablets, organic sulfur, really good for general health, skin, hair, nails, but good for reducing inflammation and pain as well. So if you're like me and you've left opiate painkillers and things and tramadol, if you've left all that behind, then I start my day with 2 Novasol curcumin capsules, and then usually a couple of MSM capsules just afterwards. And then, when I wake up, usually about 5 a.m. Or earlier, if Arlo's here, my son, wake up, have a couple of those, and then usually within like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, my aching body's starting to glow, and it's like the warmth of the curcumin just like warms you up and makes you feel nice and rosy and relaxed. So yeah, there's many other things for fibromyalgia too, not just the oils, but 5-HTP is a very good one when you get it in its pure form. Certain brands are better than others, so you may need to look around, and I think the actual tablet form tends to work better than when you get it in a gel capsule. And the other things as well, fibromyalgia, one thing I'd really recommend, if you can afford it, if you can do or get a deal off Groupon or somewhere, is go and see a chiropractor and at least get them to look at your neck and your spine and your back and everything else, because that can actually contribute. That misalignment of the spine, or what they call suboxylation, can contribute to your fibro symptoms being far, far worse. And the same with post-concussion syndrome. I know a lot of our American members talk regularly in the groups about the chiropractic and, having the necks and spines put back in place, and that's really good. So that's something that everybody, I think, should at least go for a checkup at some point if they're experiencing like major widespread pain or particular nerve pain. Now, as fibromyalgia is a degenerative condition, and at the moment there's no one kind of like silver bullet treatment to stop it or slow it down or anything. There's only a different set of lifestyle changes and things, generally like 6 or 7 things you should and can do. Then you've really got to be on top of those. You've got to take care of your diet. You've got to have the right supplements and things which will work in the right order for you, or which give you enough relief. Another thing is having moist heat at least twice a day. So whether that's a shower or a bath or something similar, or applying moist heat to certain areas that are generally achy or affected. Allopathic medications will play a part in pain relief for a lot of people, so it depends on your age and other conditions and how bad your fibromyalgia may be, as we each are completely different stages of through the fibromyalgia journey. And of course you've got to be wary of how you think, what you put in your mind, so sound healing, a massive part of that, but also reducing stress in your life. And that can be a really tough one that can take time to work out. Obviously, the longer you live with fibromyalgia, the less likely it is that you'll be able to live a fulfilling and active life work-wise as well. You may only be able to work or do work from home, or you may only be able to do certain things that you're good at. You possibly won't be able to do any kind of physical work or anything that involves long periods of standing or anything that's physically stressful, because the physical stress is probably just as bad as mental, emotional stress to psychological stress. So I think you can test yourself for so long and you can kind of put up with certain stress, but you get to a point where you'll have what's called a flare-up. And that flare-up could be, if you catch it in time, you can maybe a day or 2 or 3, you might be okay. But if you don't and you keep pushing yourself, then you could be out for a week or 2 quite easily. I'm sure you've all been there, where you've pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and next thing you know, smack, you're in bed. I always say to people, because I do still have a reasonably active life and get out as much as I can, unless it's really, really bad. I always say to people when they ask about fibromyalgia and you say, "Oh, you look well, you look really well, you look fine, you look great." I say, "Well, you only see me when I'm well," and I think that makes them stop and think. So it's maybe a good thing to have a simple explanation for people. You don't see me when I'm kind of like crippled with pain, curled up in bed, or when I can't move because my muscles are so stiff and I'm in serious pain, or like my nerves in my back have flared up as well. You don't see me then, and I wouldn't want you to see me then. You see me when I'm well. So, and then they must go away and think, well, I haven't seen you for like 3 months, or I haven't seen you for 2 months or whatever. And then, that can kind of plant a seed of a little bit of empathy of what it must be like. And of course there will be the other people that just never ever get it. So you could tell them for years on end. Think about some of my own family, and even some of them have like chronic illness, and they don't get it. And in fact, they can be some of the most ruthless ones. They could be the ones with the least empathy, and they don't give a damn about the fact that you've got fibromyalgia. They just kind of treat you like it's your fault, like you're lazy or you're stupid or something. So anyway, it's probably best to avoid that kind of stress as well, I find. So what else can we tell you about fibromyalgia? Well, I want to leave it open from this point because I've mentioned a few things, but I want you to get in touch if you can and with whatever works for you. Because there's so many. If you look at fibromyalgia groups and you look on the internet, every week or every month there's a new scientific study out which claims to have the key to fibromyalgia, the answer, and it's usually somebody trying to sell you something or get research money to go further into. But I don't think I've seen more than one or two or three ever that have been really close to the mark. And unlike a lot of illnesses and diseases, it isn't just one cause. It's multiple things that happen. And if you look at the history of fibromyalgia, it goes back hundreds of years. Not a lot of people know about this, but it does actually go back hundreds of years. And hundreds of years ago, in let's say the 16th, 17th, 18th century, people would have been like put in an asylum, or they would have been put in a home for the sick and kind of discarded from society. Look at it these days, we're a little bit more enlightened, but still there is the very real potential that if you don't have family, support, a career, you don't have savings, you don't have all that, there is, in a sense, in a spiritual sense, you could be discarded by society. You could be kind of just left on the side. And that does happen quite a bit, I think. And that's where community and sense of community comes together. And I just want to give a final mention now to on Facebook, Faulty Friends, and the wonderful ladies and gents that have been involved with that. There's Paul as well, and they run a group locally in Yorkshire where they live, where they meet regularly, and it's not just people with fibromyalgia or post concussion syndrome, but there's other conditions and a range of conditions which are all invisible, hidden disabilities, hidden illness, and I've met them a couple of times, and they're really, really, really lively, jolly folk, great to talk to. Lovely, beautiful people, a lot of fun as well. But what they do is they've taken that sense of isolation away by forming these groups, and they're doing tremendous work there. So if you are in anywhere in the Yorkshire area, have a look, Faulty Friends on Facebook, and get in touch with them if you want to do. They really are, really had a lot of fun, and they're doing something that's important within their own community, within their own area. I think if everybody started to do that nationally and even globally as well, then there'd be less isolation with people who have low social mobility, who have low kind of self-esteem because of long-term chronic illness. And it's often where they can't get the help, or the help from the healthcare services is inadequate, or it's kind of too hard to access, which is generally the case due to kind of underfunding and things in this country. So that was the final word. I wanted to end on a positive note there, and keep your messages coming in, and there are probably going to be one or two more interviews coming up. I can't quite give you more details yet, but hopefully, by this point you probably get sick of just listening to me sat here talking to myself. So we're gonna progress that very soon, and have other people join us to discuss not just post-concussion syndrome, but life, and put life to rights in general, and look at progressively about health, and how you can keep healthy, how you can use preventative medicine rather than just reactory medicine that we have in the West. So thank you once again so much for listening, and again, get in touch with us on Facebook. It's the Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness Worldwide Group. You can get in touch with me or message me, David Bottomley. You can find us on Twitter, and the handle is @postconcussion, and also our blog with lots of information, articles, history, suggestions, all things PCS, is Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness UK.wordpress.com. Okay, or just look up WordPress and look for Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness and you'll find it. So thanks again, and bye for now, and I'll speak to you soon.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.